Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, The Inevitability of Cyber Incidents, Not If, But When, featuring two distinguished leaders in the industry, Blue Team Alpha and Gradient Cyber. Our presenters, Alex Titze from Blue Team Alpha and Neal Myers from Gradient Cyber, both bring a wealth of expertise and insights that promise to elevate your understanding of the always evolving landscape of cybersecurity. Now, without further ado, let me turn it over to Alex to kick us off. Over to you, Alex.
Right. Thanks, Tammy. Super excited to chat through this. It'll be a fun webinar. We promise to keep it interactive as well. So, quick background on myself and Neal. So I'm the VP of marketing and channel here, but really what that means is I just get to talk to a lot of really smart people. So I get to hang out with CISOs, CIOs, our resale partners. And so that's really where a lot of my background and information is going to be coming from today. So yeah, super excited. Then Neal, I'll let you quick introduce yourself and then we'll just jump on in.
Thanks, Alex, and hello, everyone. My name is Neal Hartsell. Thank you for spending some time with us today, and season's greetings to all. My background, a bunch of logos there. I think the short synopsis is I spent the first half of my career trying to help people make packets move faster and faster, and the second half of my career I've tried to help people stop bad packets from flowing. So got a lot of experience in both spaces and looking forward to sharing some key points around incident response today with you.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump on in. So, I mean, why should you guys listen? I imagine, most of you in the audience, at least know something about cybersecurity. You signed up for this because, you just want to learn more, maybe get some insights, maybe some validation. But what we're seeing is that a lot of folks don't have robust incident response plans. Maybe it's something that, was talked about a long while ago. It's sat on a shelf, and like half the people that are listed in the plan, aren't even here anymore. So it doesn't really work well, right? The MSPs that, you're potentially relying on, they can't keep up. There's a lot of customers that they're interacting with, and it's hard for folks to just be 24/7 on call, able to interact with you and the potential incidents that are coming through. Compliance is becoming a much harder battle these days. It's getting more and more stringent. They seem to come up with new rules every other day. And then the services that actually prevent or are proactive in nature, they're getting more expensive. And then on top of that, the insurance industry kind of got taken to the woodshed these last couple of years. And so they're being harder on the folks that are, carrying those insurance policies and dropping them in the event of a claim. And it might not even be a full incident in order to get dropped. So lots of challenges there. And why is this difficult, right? I mean, so a lot of these things aren't brand new, right? So we've known since, probably the beginning of IT that budget and resources are always limited, right? It's not a sexy way to spend money in a business, right? You want to spend money on sales, marketing, landscaping, building costs, all that things. And so there always is this hesitation, at least it seems like in the conversations I've been having, to spend in IT and security, because when IT and security works well, you don't hear about it. Like everything's working and it's quiet. And so it's hard to attach that ROI that's so often required for CFOs to make those decisions. Like Neal, I mean, I imagine you probably have had some of that same experience.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that we might be competing with the landscaping budget, but I take your point. Budgets are tight. It's obviously the global economy is what it is right now. We've got a lot of global uncertainty. At the same time, I think everyone is pretty hyper aware of ransomware attacks and how bad that can be. And yet we don't see that necessarily causing budgets to increase. So the problem's going to have to get addressed in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, other things that have kind of aided our, fun threat actor groups is AI, right? We all use it as tools, internally to help write content, to do market research, to potentially write code. Well, that same tool is now available to threat actors. And so you're seeing phishing, attempts that used to not have great English now look perfect. It's leveled everything up so much faster, and it's hard to keep up with. And so really at the end of the day too, it's hard because people still click on things. It is so hard to be fully secure while also employing people. One of my favorite quotes ever from one of my old CEOs was, if you really want to be truly secure, you fire everybody. It's the only way you're going to get it done. So yeah, I mean, that's why this is so difficult. There's so many moving parts, and then a lack of, talent and budget. Neal, anything you'd add there?
Those are all good points. Yeah, it's I'll double down on a few of these in some coming slides. So
yeah, perfect. All right. So what are the things that, criminals can do with ChatGPT? They're writing better ransom notes. They're, writing better emails. They're finding 0-day vulnerabilities at a much faster pace. I was talking to Ryan, our VP of services, the other day, who has got a background in, bug bounties and 0-day exploitation. It used to take around 21 days for folks to be able to find a critical vulnerability and then write the exploit for it. So, you got a little bit of a breathing window there to patch and, figure things out. Now it's about 4 days. Because there's so much AI, it will write the exploit for you if you convince it to. So it's just crazy. It's just moving at such a rapid pace. They're writing scripts and stuff to have emails go to the SEC and FTC if the victim doesn't pay, and report on the incident. I mean, you have threat actors potentially, I mean, if you view it this way, helping the SEC find negligent companies. It's wild. It's a wild concept, but because they're so much faster to do all of this, it frees them up to take things to another level. So, yeah, just craziness with what's going on with ChatGPT. All right, so more numbers. That's what people want to see. 36% of insurance companies in the United States in 2022 reported a loss in cybersecurity insurance revenue, right? That's why things are so tight. You're seeing increased requirements on policies. You're seeing premiums skyrocket because it's a hard industry and line of business to be in. It's hard to forecast and model out what's going to happen in the cyberspace. $4.8 million is the average cost of a cyber attack in 2022. And that number is not decreasing. And that's scary, especially in a small to mid-sized business. If you're a manufacturer or, a financial institute and you're not able to produce or collect revenue for days because you're down, and that can put you out of business. And so it's terrifying. And the remediation services to clean up a breach, those aren't getting cheaper either. So we really want to, stress the importance of being proactive. We'll cover that in a bit.
Yeah, just to add a point there, at the macro level, I think it's important to understand, and those of you on the call who are in the security business or close to it, you're going to recognize some of these figures. But just remember, if you went to RSA, there are 3,500 companies in security now. And the industry is spending a couple $100 billion trying to protect itself on an annual basis. That's a Gartner number, 200 billion more or less. And the cybercrime industry is worth about $10 trillion by 2025. So the bad guys are really good at what they do. These numbers are very compelling.
Yeah, well, and they just don't have to play the same rules that the rest of us do, right? Like they don't have to compete with company policies or compliance regulations in order to do their jobs. I was talking to a CISO the other day, and they've been just trying to implement MFA like across the board. And they had to go, and there's a couple people that don't want to do it, and so they have to get waivers in place and things like that. It's like, that's nonsense, because I can tell you that approval process isn't happening on the threat actor side. They don't care about waivers. They're just attacking everybody. And so you have kind of one arm tied behind your back in a lot of cases, and so it's tough to talk about.
They're glad we have waivers to worry about, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So here you can see too, like, we chatted about budget, but a percentage of revenue being the security budget. I mean, you can see these aren't good numbers. I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than they're not fantastic. It's hard to compete with, against billion-dollar industry when this is the amount of money most organizations are spending on security. And we get it. It's not like, money's falling out of the sky for most organizations that they can spend millions of dollars on security. We get that. But how do we move that conversation, attaching ROI to that spend, so that we can increase awareness at the board CEO level so they start to feel it? Yeah. All right. So Neal, I'll pass it over to you here.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So you guys recognize we titled the pitch very specifically that this problem of being hit by an incident is a when, not if. And that sounds a little bit sensational, like we would do anything just to get you on the webinar. That's actually not our motivation here. Let's talk about a couple of factoids that maybe will, again, double down on some points that Alex has made. Here's an interesting one. Your attack surface is a really, really inviting target for the bad guys. Most of us will think in terms of, hey, what's the size of my company? Well, we have 3,000 employees. The average person's using an iPhone and a laptop, and we've got 500 servers. That's our attack surface. Shouldn't be that difficult to sew those holes up. The reality is your attack surface is much larger than you might think. This is a Forbes quote. 400,000, I'm rounding up, assets that the average security team has to take care of. That's devices, networks, applications, cloud host, keys. It's a much bigger set of places that are doorways for the attackers to get in than we think about on a daily basis. That's the first problem, huge attack surface. Next slide. Second problem is the bad guys will get in, and clearly they're able to stay in for long periods of time. Anybody who's familiar with the Verizon data breach report, which comes out on an annual basis, will recognize this number. 212 days is the average dwell time before we even detect that an incident occurs, if you're not using a SOC or MDR. Now, neither Alex nor I are here to say that we can drive that number to zero if you're using a SOC or an MDR, if you're pure as the driven snow from an incident response point of view. It does get a lot better, but think about 212 days. I mean, that's a good portion of a year. That's a long time for the bad guys to be inside, setting up shop so that they can, do their bidding. That's the second problem. The third problem is we just don't have enough talent in this industry to fight against the evil forces. An often used, statistic is we're down 3 million jobs from a security point of view. That number stayed the same for about 5 or 7 years now, and it's not going to change anytime soon. And we now know that more than half of the incidents that you're likely to incur can be devoted directly to a talent gap. So there's 3 problems. You've got a bad attack surface. The bad guys are really good at what they do. You can't afford, retain the right caliber of talent to solve this problem by yourself. So the next point is, let's just level set here. Maybe this is common knowledge if we've got a really savvy set of listeners on the webinar here, but an incident actually takes many, many different forms. You'll be familiar with these buzzwords. Some of these are easier to detect and more apparent than others. Let's take a case like a DDoS attack. A few years ago, I live here in Austin, Texas, and Dell Computer is a big operation up in Round Rock. They were hit with a denial of service attack, and it shut down their e-commerce system during the Christmas season. That kind of attack will cost you millions of dollars per hour. So you'll get you'll be aware of that one very quickly. If you look at cryptography, we're all familiar with ransomware attacks. You're going to know pretty quick when your operational servers are locked up and you can't run your business. So those kinds of incidents, when they occur, it's pretty apparent that they've happened and you've got to do something right away. Unauthorized access, insider threats, security misconfigurations, sooner or later you will discover these incidents as well, but they're harder to find. And it's worrisome when you do find them because you now don't know how big of a problem you have. So incidents take many, many different forms. Finding them is not easy. They become apparent in some cases, but then you have to worry about dwell time and what else is going on. That's all part of an incident response sort of discovery. Next slide, Alex. So let's talk about your incident response process. And it sounds like from the earlier poll that many of you are either prepared or let's say at least confident that you're prepared. We'll apply benefit of the doubt here. Here are three scenarios. You get hit with an incident. The first is you got to figure it out on the spot by yourself. Maybe you're really savvy at both IT, networking, and security, all three. And maybe you've got the time, energy, the tooling, the data to get to the bottom of what caused this incident quickly. If you do, our hat's off to you. By the way, you got to do that while some executives are breathing down your neck because they're really worried about their business and the reputation hit that they're going to take. That's a scenario. If you can work your way through that one, you can leave the webinar now. We wish you the best going forward. I don't think most people fit that profile. So option two is what we'll call, I think there's a build there, hopefully. Yeah, option two is what we call the cold start. This is where you've been hit with an incident. You get on the phone to someone that puts you in touch with an organization like Alex's, Blue Team Alpha, who are very practiced at doing this. They're going to come in SWAT team fashion, and they're going to run through a very specific protocol. They're going to identify the threat that caused the incident. They're going to contain that incident. They'll eradicate it, remove it from your world, get your systems restored, your business operational again. And then they're going to go back through their notes and do a really good job of helping you understand what happened, how did this happen, why did this happen, how long was this going on, what should you do to not have this happen to you again. And that's the process they're going to run through. That's the cold start model. There's a missing element and there's a better approach. And the better approach is what we'll just generically call the warm start model. One specific step has been added, and that is a preparation step before that sequence of events that I just walked through. We're going to talk about that step in a little more detail because that's the essence of what we want to share with you here today. Okay, let me go back to many people, and maybe folks on the call would say, not only do we have sort of pre-incident readiness, but we really feel good about our ability to run to ground an incident when it occurs. And if you're set up, that's great. But I would just remind that if you're going to be good at running through that incident response process, it's going to be because you're good at SecOps. And this is hard to be good at. The process that anyone who's a security engineer or security analyst is going to go through on an alert by alert or incident by incident basis is sort of described here. You got to find the signal. You got to find all the contextual wrappers that will give you more knowledge about that signal. You got to be able to prioritize that against an ocean of other things that are going on, alerts, logs. By the way, we often talk about these in sort of platitude type fashion, but a good statistic to keep in mind is if you've got a decent sized, edge firewall in front of your business, that one device might be seeing as much as 10 or 15,000 events per second. Now, the vast majority of those events are noise. They're not indicative of any kind of a problem, but somewhere in that haystack is something that's really interesting. But you have to have the time to sift and sort that, even if you've got a good security stack and you're equipped with a SIEM and so forth. Still a hard job. Now you've got to write up that signal and then take appropriate action. If you're doing this well, it doesn't mean you are not going to be hit by an incident. It means you've got the tooling and the techniques and the practices and the people to probably get to root cause sooner and get yourself back to recovery and business as normal sooner. Not a lot of companies are actually very good at this. They don't have enough talent, can't retain it for all the reasons we talked about earlier. So something to think about. Sorry, this is not a commercial. We're not here to necessarily pitch, Gradient Cyber. There are a number of MXDR vendors out there, and some good ones for sure. But it is important to understand what the actual service does. Moving left to right through the slide, a good MXDR service is going to have a platform that ingests a number of key data sources. Obviously, if you're running an EDR type platform, and there are many variations of that, we need that data. We need network information, specifically PCAP data, byflow, netflow, 5-tuple type data. That'll tell us a lot about what's traversing your network, both north, south, and east, west, and there's gold in that data. Anything we can know about the identity of your users and how they're behaving, what their privileges and permissions are. Whatever you've got running in the cloud, we need to have eyes on that. And of course, key business applications where we all run email and other things in O365 and Google Workspace. A good MXDR solution will have eyes on all of those data sources, and there's very rich telemetry sitting there. We'll also bring in a fair number of threat intel resources, which gives us a good idea of what's the current, what's the weather report? What's happening today? Where are the hurricanes and tornadoes in the security world at this point in time? What should be worried about in terms of source IP address or cinder block locations, which are spewing out really dangerous things? Are we blocked from that? So an active understanding of the threat landscape is important. Take all that data, put into a platform, and let it use a set of analytics that range anywhere from analyst-developed analytics, which could be statistical in nature, all the way to very sophisticated AI analytics based on unsupervised machine learning. A good platform will use a whole host of analytics to sift and sort that information and find the signal in the noise. At least here at Gradient Cyber, we really believe that AI is a huge part of the game, but you still will need a human in the loop. You want someone to make the final analysis on what the system has told you. You want a human to make a very thoughtful decision around the kind of response action that should be taken, and how do you report on this, not so technical people can understand, but so that business people can understand what happened as well. This is the ecosystem. It's represented by 3 key words: you ingest, you analyze, and you take action. And if you're doing that really, really well on a rigorous basis, then you've got the foundation in place that when an incident does occur, there's going to be a lot of good information that the IR team can start with, and that will speed them to recovery much, much faster. If you don't have a solution like this in place, you're going to get that cold start step. It's not that the IR team can't run through their process, they will, but they're going to have to do quite a few more hours of discovery and piecing together things on the front end. And that just extends the period of time that you're going to be nervous until this is run to ground. And Alex can speak to that in greater detail than I can.
Yeah, I mean, just to, when we talk about that cold and warm start, even to add layers there, like to not have something like this in place makes our job as responders a lot harder. It slows us down. Whereas if we have, good information coming from these different sources, we're able to pinpoint where that, breach occurred, how to plug it, and then, has good information of, okay, what did they access? What did that threat actor potentially see? But without this, we have to go blind, and it just takes us longer to plug those holes. So.
Okay, next slide. Let me just give you a quick snapshot of, if you have a solution like this in place, this is where we can tie together MXDR with IR, incident response. Very specifically, it gives us, in military parlance, left of bang information. Before the incident occurs, we've got eyes on a set of things that hopefully give us early indicators that would block an incident from occurring. But if an incident occurs, we've got some data around, hey, was there live botnet activity going on? Is there any evidence of unusual traffic patterns, which might give us a head start on what the attacker tried to do, how they got in, how pervasively they've moved laterally, these kinds of things. Can we see anything about unauthorized software installation at the endpoint level? Do we have any knowledge of lateral movement or password change thresholds at the identity level? If we can see these things, and this slide is one that we use really to say that if you don't have eyes on those kinds of telemetry points, your risk of being hit with something on the right side of this chart is much, much higher. But this data is very rich and very valuable, because one of the first things that a company like Alex is going to do is you call them in, they're going to shut your network down. If you've been whacked by ransomware, they're going to close the doorways and get it, air gapped as fast as possible. Then they're going to start bringing things back up in an orderly fashion once they've figured out where what's the root of the incident and what its spread is and so forth. So the moment they shut it down, there's no data flowing anymore. They either have access to some of this historical data or it's a cold start model. So that's the importance of thinking through the value of MXDR as a complement to incident response.
We chat about, all the different types of incidents that happen, but how they're getting in is still, it's phishing. You talk about MGM, it's vishing. It's, now there's smishing, which is, text. It's still the basics. It's still that human and emotional component that are causing these attacks. It's a lot of then, credential theft. It's business email compromise. There's some malware, but it's still just eye-opening after I don't know how many years of preaching to the choir that security awareness training needs to take place, but it's where humans come into the play, and where all these great tools that are at our disposal still can't always protect us from. So just thought I'd share that information here, and just the incredible increase of that over the course of the last couple of years. So all right, so and Neal and I will both chat through this, but it's all about prep. That's how we can reduce the impact of a breach, because like we've been chatting about, it is a matter of and so it's great to spend a bunch of money and time on prevention, but what do we think about in terms of resiliency? When it occurs, how fast can we respond? How do we minimize the impact of that breach? So just focusing on some of the basics, right? Asset management and vulnerability management are two things that, I've been chatting with folks about. It's like, how do you even know what to protect if you don't know what you have? It's hard to, protect all the different data elements and, endpoints and things like that if you don't know where they are. It becomes incredibly challenging. Insurance
plays. There's a reason why shadow IT is a popular term, because even the best IT organizations just don't know that someone fired up a server over here this morning at 10 o'clock.
Yeah. And I always laugh because, being in marketing's always guilty, it seems like, of shadow IT, spinning up new services and things like that, because you want to move fast, because everybody's telling you have to capture data, super quickly. And, for some organizations, they don't have a good handle on those processes and procedures to even, have marketing go to, the security team to, get those vendors approved and all those things. So it's it's super challenging. I'll let you chat through just, the deployment side.
Yeah, points 2 and 3, I'll touch on them. Obviously, we're advocates of having that preparation step include something like a managed service that has a full extended detection and response, eyes on your environment. And we think that's super critical for all the reasons we've talked about. Just to kind of give you an economic and pitch for a moment, and this I think is not a vendor pitch, but if you want to go build your own SOC and hire your own team, build your own platform, keep it operational, add features to it, do software updates, make sure it has resilience, all those kinds of things. You can do all that. And a lot of large companies do it, and they do it in-house, and they do it well. But you're not going to get to that kind of security solution unless you're willing to spend probably high six figures, maybe more. If you compare that to a service, a typical mid-market organization, you're going to spend $3,000 to $5,000 a month for an MXDR type service. So let's take the high number, $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year. To put that in perspective, if you want to go out and hire a very seasoned, experienced, capable, single security analyst slash engineer, you're going to pay $1.50 to $2 for that person. You're going to pay 150 grand easy salary, probably 200 loaded labor cost. So a service is going to cost you about a third of what one person that has the chops to do this work is going to cost you before you even consider all the infrastructure of SOC and platform and so forth. So the economics are fairly compelling, and I think it's when you consider the pressure on budget spend, it's not a big lift, it's not a big hit to budget. It's affordable for many organizations, and the alternative is just not affordable. The other thing that we do advocate is an incident response retainer. Sounds like a lot of folks on the call probably already have something like this in place, but if you don't, what this is really about is, hey, if you think about a building catching on fire in New York City, if the fire department has to show up and they have no idea where the water main is because the drawings are wrong, they've never accessed this building, they can't get into the OT closet because the door's locked and they don't have a key. These things mean that building is burning down faster because there was no prep plan in place. If, on the other hand, someone had been thoughtful about that and recognized that, well, we never want a fire to occur, let's go ahead and get in touch with the fire department and make sure we're doing all the right processes and procedures to facilitate their job when they have to show up. That's what an IR retainer will do for you. It will set up in advance a hotline, so you have exactly the number to call before you get hair on fire. You'll get priority access to experts who do this for a living, week in and week out. They will have some prior knowledge of what your particular IT environment looks like. That's a huge head start. They'll have a knowledge of what kind of telemetry you're already capturing. That's another huge head start. Some preparation steps like this are very valuable when that win occurs. So we really advocate for that first step in this warm start process that you see here. And again, it sounds like folks on the call, many of you may have this in place. Great. If you see things on this chart that are not covered, you might want to talk with one of us about that. If you don't have this base covered at all, we would strongly advocate that these are the steps you should take, again, to sort of guard yourself for that when moment. Alex, if anything you want to add to, well, I'll just close by saying, if you do these things, there is immediate value. It will reduce your risk of an incident. That's goal one, trying to not have this happen to you. If you do get hit, there's going to be a cost associated with getting yourself out of the sling. Have you taken these preparatory steps? If so, your cost is going to be lower. The IR team will just get their job done faster. It's plain and simple. And the most important thing, and this is what your CEO is going to want to know, how fast can we get our business back up and running? I know I got to pay the piper. I accept that. But when can I get the dollars start flowing again? That's the question they want to have answered. And so you want to know that you've done the right things in advance to speed that along.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about speed in these situations. How and the prep work that organizations can do to make it easier on whatever IR team comes in there, whether you have a pre-existing relationship with them or not. having these, foundational blocks in place there's ROI immediately right there. And I know it's hard to quantify ahead of time, and you try to get all of the metrics and things over the CFO, CEO to be able to do it. But, there's so many stories in the news and things like that you can point to say, hey, if they would have taken precautions, here's how much better they would have been off.
Well, this marks the end of our webinar. Neal, Alex, thank you both. And thank you all for joining us today. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay secure. Thanks all.